Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I am covering Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And, well, spoiler alert, I enjoyed this book. So, we're just going to go off on that pretense just to start with. If you don't know what Rebecca is about, it's really hard to get into it because, well, it's kind of in its own thing. I'm going to do my best to explain the plot without actually, I can't because it's so intrinsic on its plot twists that it's really, really hard to talk about it. But basically, this meek and mild woman marries this rich guy whose wife had died a year prior, and this woman, Rebecca, was this massive presence. Like, everyone loved her. She was very powerful. She was a woman of mass influence. You get the picture. Now, you put this meek, mild woman in there who remains nameless throughout the entire book, and you kind of just start seeing her mental state start to slowly degenerate. And it was actually really interesting to watch. Or read, I guess, in this case. One of the things that really took me, like, right off the hop is how believable these characters are. Like, you've got Maxim de Winter, who is the rich guy, and he is very emotionally distant. And at first, he just kind of seems like an asshole, although at the same time, this is England in the 1930s. It wouldn't surprise me if that's just how men were. Emotionally distant, they just were not the sort of huggy-feely sort of people. Wouldn't surprise me, but he was described as being colder, like exceptionally cold, especially toward the main character. The main character, she is not very interesting, but in all the right ways. This is where it gets really hard to gets hard to explain because her discoveries throughout the entire book really help shape who she is. Like, she's born basically a nobody, is told so up until she marries Maxim de Winter, and his coldness toward her doesn't help her in any shape, way, or form. It's not until there's this big reveal where she actually starts to get any sort of real confidence toward who she is. And this whole draining of her spirit, the degrading nature on her mental psyche, like, it's not her who's interesting. It's everything around her that's interesting. And she's not a static character. Like, she actually does try and do things, but typically it just ends up failing, blowing up in her face, typically due to Rebecca and Rebecca's memory. She's overshadowed by it, and it's actually really fascinating to read. And all the while, there's the mistress of the household, the one who runs the show pretty much, Mrs. Danvers, and she adored Rebecca. Like, the Hitchcock film kind of has this whole romantic side to it, I think. I think that's what I was going for. I didn't really see it when I watched it, but it was explained to me, and I understand where it was coming from. I always saw it as more of a maternal thing, and that's definitely how it came across in the book. Was more of a maternal thing because Mrs. Danvers basically raised Rebecca. So Rebecca dies, and Maxim brings this new woman in, and Danvers hates her. Just hates her. Does everything she can to try and make this woman just feel awful about who she is and the position that she's been given. And you definitely feel like Mrs. Danvers is just the devil incarnate. Because everything that she does is just spite and malice. And I'm not going to lie, that definitely made the book even more interesting. Like, straight up, this book is basically rich people and rich people problems. But that doesn't take anything away from how good it is, the story that it tells, and the themes that it portrays. Especially in terms of how somebody can just fall how far a person can fall and then pick themselves back up and at the same time support somebody else. It was kind of interesting in that respect. But this book is not without its flaws. Mostly, it is very, very dry in a lot of places. Like, you get some interesting scenes, but you also get the stuff that happens in between. So you get a lot of dry moments. And the main character, oh my god, does she ever have an imagination on her. Like, she just goes over and scenes over and over and over in her head. And don't get me wrong, that is very relatable. I do that as well. But after the 6th or 7th or 10th time it happens throughout the book, I'm just like, okay, god damn it, get on with it. Just get on with it. Because it'll be several pages before anything actually starts to happen, because it's just her in her head. So, don't get me wrong. The book is very good, but having to slog through that stuff really did... It did kind of put a damper on the enjoyment of the book. It kind of just brought the pacing to a halt, and you just kind of had to slowly get through that muck before you can actually get going again. Although one of the biggest, actually, saviors of this book is Maxim's sister, Beatrice. I loved her. She was so fun. She's this woman, she's 45, she has no tact, loves to just talk. She's not a gossip like, say, Mrs. Van Hopper, but just loves to talk, loves to just... And she's very blunt, she's very honest about her opinions towards people. She likes the main character. In fact, she goes out of her way to be kind to the main character. But at the same time, she's very tactless throughout, and I loved it. But yeah, there's not really much else I can talk about with this book without going into spoiler territory, and I'm not getting into spoiler territory. This book, it has rereading, like, it has value in rereads, but I think some of the bite is removed knowing what's going to happen. And it kind of was, because I saw the Hitchcock film before reading this book. And then I read the book and I went and watched the Netflix adaptation. Don't do that. It's absolute fucking garbage. Even as just a movie separate from the book, it's still really, really bad. Because it doesn't make any goddamn sense. But the Hitchcock film, really, really good. I enjoy Hitchcock films. I know he was an awful person, but I enjoy his movies. In any case, I knew what was going to happen. I knew the plot twists. And don't get me wrong, I still enjoyed it. And there were still but there just weren't any aspects that made me go, no. Holy shit, I didn't see that coming. I mean, it did with the movie. There is one major difference between the book and the Hitchcock film, which I'm not going to get into because, hey, it's going to ruin things a little bit. But yeah, that's about all I got for you guys. Rebecca, I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10. It was very, very enjoyable. But those slow spots really did just kind of drag things down a little bit. They weren't a deal breaker. They weren't any sort of game changer or anything like that. It was just a bit of a slog. So yeah. Have a good one, folks.